began on a night where the darkness seemed thicker, the air colder, and the silence more deafening than usual. The moon hung low, casting long, twisted shadows across the empty streets. I had never been one to believe in the supernatural, but that night changed everything. I met him at a party, an event I hadn't even planned to attend. He stood out from the crowd, not just because of his tall, lean figure, but because of the way his eyes seemed to pierce through the dim light. Those eyes, so deep and endless, a shade of blue so cold it sent shivers down my spine. He introduced himself as Adrian, his voice smooth and velvety, laced with an accent I couldn't quite place. We spent the night talking, and as the hours ticked by, I felt an inexplicable pull towards him. There was something about him, something mysterious, something dangerous. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something, but I didn't care. I was enthralled. When the party ended, he offered to walk me home. As we strolled through the deserted streets, the conversation took a darker turn. He spoke of the night, of how he preferred it to the day, how he found solace in the shadows. His words were poetic, yet there was a menacing undertone that made my heart race. When we reached my doorstep, he paused, staring at me with those haunting eyes. "I'll see you again," he whispered, a promise and a threat all at once. Before I could respond, he was gone, vanishing into the night like a ghost. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself thinking about Adrian more than I cared to admit. He hadn't called, hadn't shown up, and I began to wonder if he was just a figment of my imagination. But then, one night, he appeared again, this time at my window. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt a twisted sense of comfort. He was like a drug, intoxicating and addictive. I let him in without hesitation, and as the night wore on, I found myself lost in his stories, tales of ancient cities, forgotten wars, and blood-soaked battles. But there was something in his eyes, something that flickered when he spoke of blood. It was as if he were reliving those moments, savoring them. And then it hit me, a realization so horrifying, it left me breathless. Adrian wasn't human. The clues were all there, the way he avoided the sun, the coldness of his touch, the way his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He was a vampire, a creature of the night, a predator, and I was his prey. Knowing the truth didn't change how I felt about Adrian. If anything, it made him even more irresistible. I was drawn to his darkness, to the danger he represented. He was a creature of nightmares, and I was falling for him. But as our relationship deepened, so did the horrors. I began having nightmares, visions of blood, of death, of Adrian standing over me with blood dripping from his fangs. I would wake up drenched in sweat, but the fear wasn't enough to keep me away. Adrian was always there, waiting in the shadows, watching me with those cold, predatory eyes. He never spoke of his true nature, but he didn't need to. The signs were everywhere. The way his eyes would darken when I bled. The way he would grow tense when we were near a graveyard. The way he seemed to know things he shouldn't. One night, the nightmares became reality. I woke up to find Adrian standing over me, his eyes glowing in the dark, his lips curled into a hungry smile. He leaned in close, and I felt the sharp prick of his fangs against my neck. But instead of fear, I felt a twisted sense of pleasure. He was claiming me, marking me as his, and I let him. As the days passed, I began to change. My skin grew paler, my senses sharper, and my appetite for food diminished. I knew what was happening. Adrian was turning me into one of them. But instead of resisting, I embraced it. The transformation was slow, agonizing, but I welcomed the pain. It was a price I was willing to pay to be with Adrian, to be a part of his world. I began to crave the night, to feel more alive in the darkness than I ever had in the light. But with the transformation came the hunger, Hunger for blood, for life. It was insatiable, gnawing at me day and night. Adrian fed me, sating the hunger, but it was never enough. I wanted more, needed more. I began to see people differently, not as friends or strangers, but as prey. The urge to feed grew stronger with each passing day, and I found myself drawn to the night, to the hunt. The night came when Adrian and I would hunt together. He led me through the city streets, his movements silent and predatory. I followed, my heart pounding with anticipation. We found our victim, our lone man walking home, oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. Adrian struck first, moving with a speed and grace that took my breath away. I watched as he sank his fangs into the man's neck, draining him of life. And then it was my turn. I hesitated, the last remnants of my humanity warring with the hunger. But the hunger won. I lunged at the man, sinking my fangs into his flesh, tasting blood for the first time. It was exhilarating, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. The man's life force flowed into me, filling the emptiness inside. When it was over, I stood there, panting, my hands shaking, covered in blood. Adrian watched me with a satisfied smile, his eyes glowing with approval. I was one of them, no longer human, no longer bound by the laws of the living. I was a creature of the night, a predator, and I had never felt more alive. But with this new life came a new reality, world of darkness, of blood, of eternal night. I was no longer the girl who had met a mysterious stranger at a party. I was something else, something dangerous, and there was no turning back. This is not the end. Subscribe now.